Hey Christians. Alright, so this is a response to KingHeathen's recent video entitled Responding to RaiderJo on Heaven and Hell, which KingHeathen made as a response to my response to his initial video, which is called Heaven versus Hell. Yes, so if you haven't followed our discussion thus far, I'm going to provide links to each of the videos in the description box. Yes. So, the first point that I'd like to bring up really isn't that important, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this particular issue, but briefly here I just wanted to address the whole question of whether or not you answered ScrapGoldBass's question about hell in your first video. Yes, so I made the point in my response that you didn't answer his question about how you envision hell, since simply saying I envision it as not existing does not answer the question, what do you think it would be like if it did exist? In my response, sorry, not in my response, in your response, you said this, quote, actually that's not what he was asking. What he was asking was exactly what I answered, and if you don't believe me, you can ask him, end quote. So I actually did ask him. I asked ScrapGoldBass, and he said this, quote, you are right, he didn't really get into the details of the Christian hell. However, KingHeathen was focusing in on part of my question, that if hell is biblically understood, would he still prefer hell over God, end quote. So, yeah, anybody who watched this video and then your response knows that you didn't fully answer his question. He asked you what you envisioned the Christian hell as being like, and if it did exist, would you still rather go there than heaven? So you did respond to his question as to whether or not you'd still want to go there over heaven. You made that very clear. But you did not respond to the part of his question where he asked you how you envision the Christian hell if it did exist. Saying I envision it as not existing does not answer the question, because he's asking you how you would envision it if it did exist. So yes, anyways, now that that's out of the way, the next point that I wanted to respond to has to do with your discussion of God handing people over to Satan to be tortured in hell. Yes, so in your original video you were talking about how much you despise and dislike the Christian God, and you said that if he did exist, that you would rather go to hell with Satan than God, that you would rather have God hand you over to Satan than go to heaven, because you trust Satan more than you trust God. In my response, I talked about how this reasoning just shows that you do not understand Christianity, that you don't understand Christian theology at all, and you responded by saying this.
How did you miss that my entire point was that there are people who believe things that aren't in the Bible, and I was describing what people believe, the popular opinion, so to speak? How did you miss that part? It was the central core idea of everything that I was saying.
Now this claim of yours that that when you were discussing God handing people over to Satan, you were just talking about some things that Christians believe that aren't in the Bible, doesn't really seem to fit with what you were saying in your first video. When you had finished not answering ScrapGoldBass's question by saying that you envision hell as not existing, you answered the rest of his question, which was that if the Christian hell did exist, would you still rather go there than heaven, by talking about how you would trust Satan over God and would therefore rather be handed over to Satan in hell than to be with God in heaven. So in this whole rant, you showed absolutely no sign that you were talking about things that Christians believe that aren't in the Bible. There was just no sign of this at all. That didn't come up until way later in your video, as we're going to see right now.
What kind of hell are you envisioning the Christian hell as being?
I envision it to be non-existent. What part of that do you not understand? I don't think I'm going to be partying with Satan. I think I'm going to be dead and not doing anything. However, in context of the video and what I was trying to say from that, what I am talking about is, if the God of the Bible is true, and all the horrible, nasty, ugly things he did are real, and that's exactly how it happened, I want nothing to do with that. So if that person who committed genocide and ordered the death of pregnant women to rip the babies out of their bellies and smash them on the rocks, and all the other horrible things that he did. If that guy tells me, and if you don't believe me, I'm going to send you to this other guy, and he's going to be mean to you. I don't care what he says about the other guy. I know what that guy said he did himself, and that guy seems like an asshole. So I don't trust his opinion of the other guy. How do I know that he's telling me the truth, that the other guy is going to treat me bad? I don't know if he is. I don't know if he's not. But I can tell you this much, I don't believe in any of it. So I'm not envisioning hell as being a party place. I envision it as being non-existent. But even if it were real, I would trust the devil over your God, because your God himself said that he was an asshole. I wouldn't want to spend eternity with that creator, Jack. That's what Jack had to say about it. You know, it'd be great because you're with the creator. I wouldn't want to be with that creator. I would not feel the bliss of his love. I would think about the horrible, nasty, awful things he did if the Bible is true. And I will take my chances with the devil. And that brings us full circle. A lot of people's concept of what heaven is going to be isn't based on the Bible. Jack says that...
Alright, so as we clearly just saw, KingHeathen, you answered the question of whether you'd rather go to heaven or hell. If they were real, by saying that you would rather go to hell because you feel that you'd be able to trust Satan over the God of the Bible. So you said all this demonstrating that you do not understand what Christianity teaches about hell. It wasn't until way later in your video that you started talking about how Christians believe things about heaven that aren't in the Bible. So yeah, there was no connection there that I could see, at least. So now it's very possible that I'm misunderstanding you. So if that is the case, I sincerely apologize. I really do, and I do honestly ask you to correct me, because I don't want to misrepresent you. However, unless you can show me from the clip that was just played that you were really just talking about, that you were really just giving an example of how Christians believe things that aren't in the Bible when it comes to heaven. That's what you meant by talking about God handing people over to Satan. Unless you can demonstrate that to me, then I think that you're incorrect in saying that I misunderstood your point.
Detch in 1981 did an excellent video about this, showing this absolutely retarded idea that some Christians throw out there of our worldview. Please, Joe, tell me, what is my worldview? You seem to think that I subscribe to every idea you think all atheists have, despite the fact that the only thing you know about me is that I don't believe in God.
KingHeathen, I realize that I do not know everything that you believe. I realize that there is not a set of worldview beliefs that all atheists must adhere to. That's not what I was trying to say. The point that I was trying to make was that a worldview in which God does not exist has no basis for objective morality. Why did I assume that you affirm objective morality? Well, that brings us to the next point that I'd like to respond to. But it's looking like this video is taking too long, so that's going to have to be in part 2. So, thanks very much for watching, everyone, and you will see the link for part 2 in the description box.